Hi, Alan Stratton from Woodturning. St. Patrick's Day is almost here. I don't have an appropriate pot for the leprechauns to leave me their gold in, so I need to make one. At a recent club meeting, Nick Stagg did an excellent demo on bowl turning. I'll use some of his techniques plus what I've learned from others such as Richard Raffan. He also left me a blank. He used this as a jam chuck, has an expansion recess on this side, but since he hauled it down on this side, I'm going to reverse it, put my expansion on this side, and make a roundish bowl up this way. Let's see how it turns out. Gotta have a place for that gold.
Unfortunately, this piece of ash wood had been left for a month without any treatment while I was out of town. In this time it developed some nasty checks or cracks in the end grain. I hoped that the checks would disappear if I tooled off about 1/2 inch. I cleaned off the remnants of Nick's jam chuck and trued up the blank. I made a new recess in which to insert my chuck. I sized it to be just a little larger than the minimum for my chuck jaws. I'm used to measuring the inner size of the jaws, so I had to be careful to switch my brain to measure the outer edge of the jaws. Then I proceeded to shape the bowl's outside and remove the checks. Just a little bit more to get rid of the checks. Just a little bit more to get rid of the checks. Just a little bit more to get rid of the checks. Just a little bit more to get rid of the checks. Oops, I was wrong. The checks went much deeper. Instead of a nice big pot for the leprechaun's gold, it was going to be much smaller. After seeing the smaller diameter, I figured there would not be enough wood to hold the chuck in expansion without splitting out the base. So I had to tool off the bottom a bit more and disguise the mounting tenon as a bead that the chuck could grab onto. One thing I learned from my recent Richard Raffan class is that mounting tenons do not have to be huge. So the small bead is just larger than the minimum diameter of my chuck, so the chuck could grab on with as much contact around the bead as possible, then pray I would not get a nasty catch. I went ahead and finished the base with some decoration, then sanded the outside and finished it with mineral oil and beeswax. With a little luck, I would not have to reverse mount the bowl again to clean up the bottom. I reversed the mount so I could begin hollowing the interior. To avoid stain from the interaction of the tenon in the wood and the iron chuck, I put some very thin plastic between the bowl and the chuck. I started hollowing with my large bowl gouge. With the smaller size of this bowl, this was going to be tight quarters. I decided to drill out the middle, more to establish my maximum depth than for wood removal. Another lesson from Richard Raffan: he is not a purist on using bowl gouges. Once the depth gets so far that the bowl gouge becomes dicey, he has no problem switching to scrapers, both to remove wood at the bottom and curved scrapers to refine the interior of the bowl. I don't have his repertoire of curved scrapers yet. Instead, I switched to a round carbide cutter on a heavy bar and handle. I used this cutter to remove both wood at the bottom and in shear scraping mode on the interior sides to refine them. I took a little more off the exterior, then started sanding up through about 120 grit. Sanding with mineral oil and beeswax sure helps reduce the dust flying around. Then I stopped to form a couple of small beads around the opening. I did not want to hit the bead with any coarse sandpaper, so the finer grits for cleanup would be sufficient. My disappointment with this bowl is not putting it in a plastic bag while I was gone out of town. It also has a slight bump on the outside that I should have smoothed out. The walls are slightly thick for the size of bowl. However, this wood is still wet and will still warp. Maybe the bump will be hidden by the warp, and after letting it dry, I could still remount it and refine it to remove the warp and the bump. We'll see. Meanwhile, maybe with the smaller bowl, it will not scare away the leprechauns, and they'll leave me at least a little bit of their gold in my pot of gold. Please like this video, please subscribe, and we'll see you at the next one.